pretty much where he was going because of the knowledge held outside the public arena. And another guy who worked for both families we know as Nostradamus, Michel de Notre Dame. The reason that guy, I'm not saying he was a bad guy or anything, but the reason he had tremendous esoteric knowledge compared with the rest of the population is because he had access into these advanced levels of knowledge that are passed over through this secret society network through history and kept from the people. This is Charlemagne here, outside the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. So it comes down all the way through these lines and all the way down through the French royal lines and into the British royal families as well, right down to the present one that connects into the Merovingians also. And because of this process of taking the bloodlines out with the British Empire, it goes into the presidents of the United States as well. As Burt's Peerage said one election ago in America, every single presidential election, bar none, from Washington to George W. Bush, has been won by the candidate with the most royal genes, and therefore they've started to predict presidencies, because they picked this up some elections ago, they've started to select presidents or predict presidents on the basis of their royal heritage. Right down to these two who lock into this same network. And this is why it was possible to predict that George W. Bush would be the next president of the United States 3 years before he became president. Two reasons. First of all, the bloodline, the connection into the Bush family, which is a very significant Illuminati family in America, and also the fact that they were bringing him to political prominence in Texas as governor. So this guy was not, well, he wasn't elected, but he was selected long before. Now this is an alternative genealogy, which I do have sympathy with, I have to say. Comes down through Scottish family bloodlines as well. Very, very important area for the Illuminati, Scotland, in history, and that's one of the reasons the biggest secret society in the world is called the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, after that very small country at the top of the British Isles. Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon Church, which is an Illuminati front, big time in Salt Lake City, Merovingian bloodline. The guy who took it on, Brigham Young, Merovingian bloodline. The guy, just one quick mention before I go to the next guy. This is the state seal of Utah, a symbol of the Merovingian bloodline going right back in history is the beehive or the bee. And so you have that right at the heart of the Utah state seal. And Utah, of course, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Mormon Church. Interestingly, another symbol of the Merovingian bloodline going back into history is the fleur-de-lis that you see all over British royalty. Charles Taze Russell, who created the Jehovah's Witness movement, along with others, Merovingian bloodline, buried under a pyramid in America. And these religions like that are created again to divide and rule and program people into certain beliefs and to keep them in the pen, in the web. And I'm far from the only person that started to realize that there is an Illuminati bloodline that they are obsessed with maintaining. So as this has passed through history, this network has been behind many different empires. Starting with the Babylonian, when you can pick it up, and then eventually it moved to Rome. And when it was in Rome, that's when we had the creation of the Roman Empire and the creation of the Roman Church that became Christianity as we know it. They then eventually moved up further into Europe, and one of the major operational centers to this day is London, and particularly that part of London known as the City of London, where the financial district is. And the number of secret societies, elite ones, within this web in the City of London is enormous compared with most other parts of the world. America is important, very much so, but to a very large extent, America is used to fire the bullets that are actually loaded in Europe. Because if you want to hide where the power is, you want people looking over there when the power is over there. So to a very large extent, America has been set up to fire the bullets and take the focus of people when the real power is behind here in Europe, in places like Paris and Germany. So what you got eventually, as the British Empire and these other empires exported the Illuminati, not just its bloodline, but the secret society network through which it manipulates, you create a situation where it's like a spider's web. The center is in Europe. That's where the real deal is manipulated from. Then in the different areas of the world, different countries, you have what I call the bloodline branch managers, that their job is to control their country's political system, banking system, business system, and media ownership. And so from the center of the web, the policy for the centralization of power is dictated, and the job then is for the people in the different countries to introduce that agenda in their particular sphere of influence. Which is why you find, when you travel around, that the same things are introduced in different countries, apparently unconnected, at the same time. Even some wording of the legislation is exactly the same. It's because it's coordinated from a central point, because of the system I'm talking about, the spider's web. And so what they've created as they've passed through history is this structure of pyramids within pyramids. It's like Russian dolls, one doll inside a bigger doll inside a bigger doll. This is small pyramids inside bigger pyramids inside bigger pyramids. So if you work in a local bank, taking the checks across the counter, you don't know what's being decided in the bank manager's office behind you, never mind what's being happening at higher levels of the bank. The bank manager behind you doesn't know what's happening at the next level, and they don't know what's happening at the next level. And so even in a single bank, there's a tiny few at the top that know what's going on, and the rest of them only know what they need to know to make their contribution. The only people that know how all those contributions fit together are the few at the top. And then that bank goes into another period and another pyramid until eventually you've got one that encompasses the whole of the global banking system. And when you get to the top, you find the same few family lines. And they're dictating down the system a policy to unfold this agenda of centralization. A transnational corporation in itself is a compartmentalized pyramid, massively so. But if you go to a high enough pyramid in that network, you find one that encompasses all the transnational corporations. And at the top of that are the same people at the top of the banking system. A few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe not quite that long, a journalist worth the name called John Pilger did a very good documentary on ITV about globalization. What is globalization, for goodness sake? It's the agenda unfolding, the centralization of global power. It's not just big, bad, greedy corporations. They are the vehicle to achieve global centralization of power. And what Pilger said in this documentary, that today, a quarter of the world's economic activity is down to around 200 companies. Staggering enough. But if you go to the next level, the pyramid that encompasses all of them, they are the same company, in effect. And so what you can have is, from this point, with all these different pyramids going into the same pyramid peak, you can have the same policy of incessant centralization of power coming down these apparently, at our level of experience, unconnected organizations and institutions. And the more you centralize power, the more power you have to centralize it even quicker. And that's why this momentum for constant centralization has got faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And will continue to do so as this process continues of centralize more power, centralize quicker. So, you can have situations, and you do all over the place, where in the movie level, situations are set up, conflicts, us against them, this religion against that religion, war, but actually the two sides are